Welcome to the Marta Hobbs podcast, a sacred space of reclamation, unraveling, and in the age where loneliness and isolation are at an all-time high, also a place of deep connection to each other as well as to ourselves. As I share the intimate journey of my own life, I hope to reflect your own so that you can live more deeply and freely from a place of full alignment and authenticity. Because that is what we're here to do, to continually discover ourselves in order to fully express our sacredness, wholeness, and radiance as women. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to the Marta Hobbs podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Today, I wanted to tell you a bit of a story. You know, I was thinking this morning, I didn't start the podcast to talk about myself, but I so often find that storytelling is so important. And so often stories can be such reflections and mirrors to us of things about ourselves that maybe we weren't aware of, or maybe we weren't able to see, or maybe simply we weren't safe enough to access within ourselves, that hearing or seeing or touching it in someone else all of a sudden makes it safer for that part of us to come up to the surface and show up. I also find stories, I think it's just one of my favorite things to do is to sit around and tell stories. And, you know, the level of love for storytelling that I bring here is also because I love listening to stories. You know, I grew up listening to the fairy tales written by Hans Christian Andersen, you know, old stuff in Europe, like those beautiful folk tales, so rich with layers that at the time I wasn't even understanding, but they were touching something within me and opening and activating. By the way, when you hear noises like that, I want you to hear it for a moment. It's real life. I'm recording in the Caribbean, and that is how small propeller planes come on the island and land. It's the second shortest runway in all of Caribbean and no jets in here. So it gives you a bit of a context where I'm telling you this story from. But what I wanted to share with you today is how important at a certain point in my life celebrating myself became. Because for the majority of my life, before I was in my 40s, I was just super focused and very good at celebrating other people. I loved hosting. I loved gathering people in the honor of someone else. And so throwing anniversaries or birthday parties or surprise parties, or, you know, even planning board meetings for our company, like stuff that was done for our business. I loved organizing events. And the one thing that kept coming up for me again and again and again that I couldn't make sense of or sort of make peace with was, why was it that when I was so excellent at celebrating everyone else, no one could quite ever celebrate me in the way that I wanted? And I couldn't exactly narrow it down, nail it down, or place my finger on what was going on for a really long time. I just found myself with a very small aftertaste. It was delicate. It was barely there, of disappointment after birthdays, after holidays. Something wasn't quite right, but I wasn't willing to allow that, because that would mean I'm just so spoiled. And I'm just so rotten, and that, you know, already I'm so loved and I'm being celebrated. It's just, what am I looking for? Perfection? Am I just ungrateful? Am I just spoiled? You know, when is there ever enough? Like all that kind of stuff would come up. So I would constantly, for a really long time, just stuff it down and just say something like, don't be ridiculous. And this, I'm mainly talking about, you know, the season where you have children, you're throwing a lot of really wonderful birthday parties because you just want to make them happy. You're maybe hosting a lot of things in your home. For us, every year we gathered our whole neighborhood and very often the people that worked for us at Cheap Caribbean. But this spectacular Halloween bash, we called it the Hobbs Halloween Bash. It was known in our area. Jim played in a band with our friends, and everyone was required to wear a costume, adults included. We were living in Bucks County, Pennsylvania at the time, and the people were incredible. And it was so fun to see how much joy there was for the adults to actually dress up, not just to put their children in costumes. So that season of my life, when my kids were quite young, and birthday parties were so fun and so festive, so innocent and pure and just like bubbling with joy. And the birthday cakes and celebrating my mom and my dad in that season. Like I would always love to like take them to the Caribbean with us where we worked at the time. So we were down here quite a bit. Same thing with Jim. There were always these elaborate, but not from the standpoint of expensive, but like I would put so much thought into who the person was I was celebrating, what they loved, what was important to them in their life, and just try to give that to them in a really loving and generous way. Like I would take a lot of time and I loved it, and it wasn't coming from a space of, I don't think any woundedness was in there. I wasn't trying to earn anything. It was just like, how much can I express to this person? Just how dear they are to me and what they mean to me. And so I just loved it. And the same thing, like when we were running Cheap Caribbean and there was a few hundred people on staff, when we started to really grow and there was 100, 200, 300, 400 people that worked for us, it was so important to me to celebrate them. Every little thing, if it was Valentine's Day, leaving little trinkets on their desks, if it was their birthdays, like everyone got a handwritten birthday card with a gift card in it. Or if it was the holiday season, and I would throw this beautiful Christmas party in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, where our office was, in a place called Aldi Mansion. And we worked at a call center together, most of us. That was my office. I ran the call center. But to then make everyone dress up and clean up and go to, like a dinner where we wore dresses and gowns and tuxedos and suits, but really in an effort to celebrate the people that were important to me at the time, my employees. So coming at it from that, like really pouring into the people that mattered to me, there was something that when it was my turn to be celebrated, something wasn't quite hitting it. And of course, the first thing to look at when you're feeling something like that is to blame the people who are celebrating you. Like, they're not quite getting it. They're not doing it right. But that wasn't it. And I really didn't understand what was happening. And this is a story until I turned 46. That was 5 years ago. And I turned 46, my birthday is in September, right in the midst of COVID, the pandemic. At the time, we were living in Florida, in Sarasota. And that year for my birthday, I had booked a trip for myself to Paris. And like, I had never done that before. Go somewhere by myself on my birthday. I'd always spent it with my family. 45 birthdays before, whether it was mom and dad, my immediate family, or Jim, or then Jim and the kids, like always with family. And what opened the door for that was sort of something unusual. At the time, I got a new job. It was a volunteer job. One of my dearest friends and for a long time, my mentor, took a new job in Paris at the American Church in Paris. And she had asked me to come along with her to give of my time to this project she was running there. And we'd been living in Florida for a year. And I was just dying to get back to Paris. I missed it so much. I felt like I left a piece of my heart in that city every time. And so when this dear friend of mine asked me to come and accompany her on this journey she was taking with the American Church in Paris, I would fly in once a month and we had a couple of things we were working on together. So the first month of that job was September, which was my birthday. And so I decided I was going to go to Paris for a month. it was COVID, so I didn't want to be on the plane a lot. I was really scared. It was my first time flying in the United States. COVID had hit just in March of that year. So this was just 6 months into the pandemic. We didn't really know what was going on. I was like, I'm going to go so that I can arrive there when she arrives there. We can start the project together in person on the ground. And I can also celebrate my 46th birthday. Lo and behold, because it was COVID, all of the hotels in Paris shut down for the pandemic. It was a government issued order. They were supposed to reopen September 1st. And so I had booked myself landing on the 7th on my birthday. I had double masked. I bought the plastic face shield. I was terrified. And I'm high risk. My health has got some markers that aren't there. Anyway, I was nervous. So I have this beautiful plan. And even to give myself permission to do that was a process. I was afraid Jim wasn't going to be happy that I'm going to do something by myself. I was afraid. My son was still living with us at the time. He was like, where's mom going? It's her birthday. I was afraid everyone was going to judge me. All this stuff was coming up because it was so out of character for me. And so I moved myself through that, had a lot of really uncomfortable but open conversations with Jim around it, because I want to go do this. Doesn't mean anything about how much I love you. I just want to explore this. And then I would get scared and back out. And he would actually encourage me and be like, no, I think you should go. I think this is important to me. So we were both on both sides of the argument, the yes and the no. And so anyway, about a week before, for my birthday week, I booked a week at the Four Seasons Georges. If you know me, I have such a special relationship with that property. And so to celebrate my birthday, I booked myself a week there. I was going for a month and I'm like, I'll stay a week at the Four Seasons. I don't want to spend that kind of money on myself to stay there for the whole month, but I'll stay for a week and then I'll find an Airbnb while I'm there. And so a week before, the hotel calls and they're like, unfortunately, we have some really bad news. We're not going to open the property in time for your birthday. Unfortunately, we won't be able to host you. The government is extending the closures of the hotels. And they were like, what can we do? Can we help you find accommodations? It was it was actually really lovely the way they did it. But I was really gutted. I was like, oh, I'm thinking, man, it took me so long to even grow a pair of, balls to be able to be brave enough to go. And now the whole thing's getting canceled. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe, I'm starting backtracking. And then after, again, conversations with Jim and encouragement from his side, thank God, and really also coming in touch with this desire. There was a part of me that wanted to explore this. What is this wanting to be by myself on my birthday? And so I told the hotel, I'm going to have to, I don't know, and let me call you back. And so after I do this process, a couple of days later, I send them an email, half jokingly saying, listen, I am actually coming for a month. I understand you're not opening, but I just need a bed and Wi-Fi. Would you be willing to let me stay the whole month? And you will not believe it but they said yes. And it's so unusual. And it's so unlike the French to sort of bend the rules. And so basically, this is one of my favorite stories. I was the only guest at the Four Seasons Georges for 2 weeks that month, where the hotel was closed. The front lobby was shut down. There were no flowers there, nobody at the front desk, no one on the concierge side. I would come in through the side door of the hotel because one of the 3 restaurants was open for lunch and dinner. And so I would use the side door that led to the restaurant to enter the property. And then I would be the only one with a room key that was a guest staying at this hotel. So in the morning, when I woke up and there was no lunch or dinner, so the restaurant was closed, there was no one in this hotel. I mean, I think after they said yes, they hired security. So there's always someone there watching over me. They left the lights on. They gave me a WhatsApp number I could use for any requests. I basically had a private concierge while I was staying there. And every night they would text me the night before and say, what would you like for breakfast the next day? And they cooked me breakfast. They brought in a small skeleton staff just to like soft launch the opening that was coming but was delayed. And every morning they would wheel in this most beautiful room service breakfast. And I'll never forget it. I remember the room I stayed. They gave me a beautiful suite. I had a couch living room area and the bedroom. And I would have them wheel this table in front of the window, this beautiful French double door that looked out onto my little balcony that looked out into the courtyard where the restaurant was below. And I would have them place that table by the window, open earlier in September when it was warm, closed later in the month when it got chilly. And every morning I would eat 2 poached eggs and avocado and toast and orange juice and a tea. And on Sundays I would have French toast with berries. And for a month, they did this for me. And it was the most magical experience. And so then what I decided is, how do I want to mark my actual birthday? And a few days before coming, they put out this marketing initiative that said, okay, the hotel is closed. We're not using the hotel rooms. But if you want to have a special dinner, the head chef of the one restaurant that was open, their Italian restaurant called Le Georges, will cook you a private meal on the balcony on the penthouse, overlooking the lights of the city as the sun's setting, as the moon comes up and you watch the Eiffel Tower sparkle. And I was like, this is for me. I don't know if anyone else booked that experience, but I booked it on my birthday and I invited 3 girlfriends. And we hadn't seen each other in so long. And it was still in the beginning when they came, everyone, you had to wear a mask to get there. And it was that awkwardness of COVID when you're like, are we allowed to hug? Because like, it's a birthday, I want to hug. And we had the most magical dinner. I don't know how many courses, 6 or 8. It was 6 hours, I think. We started at 5 and watched the sun go down, had a glass of champagne, and they served us hors d'oeuvres. And we're in the penthouse on the balcony, the most perfect, beautiful fall day. Sun is out, watching the women I love arrive one after the other, coming to the Four Seasons, which they know very well, but this time entering through the side door while a security guard escorts them to the elevator, brings them up to the penthouse, escorts them to the penthouse and to our beautiful white cloth table set up for 4. I mean, it was the most magical experience. And what made it so magical was I gave that to myself and I received it from myself. Like, this was exactly how I wanted to spend my birthday, down to every detail, what we ate, who sat where, what I wore. I mean, it was like perfect and like so luxurious, but really kind of simple too. It was just dinner. But the only guest at the Four Seasons, Georges V in Paris, penthouse suite, balcony, the most beautiful day watching the sun go down as we cheers our pink champagne. It's my favorite. To watching the moon rise and the Eiffel Tower lights come on the hour, every hour for 5 minutes. I think I cried every time that thing sparkled. And this was also the first time I decided to hire a photographer. Now I'm 46. You know how it is when you're a mom and all the pictures on your phone are of the kids, maybe with your husband, and all the beautiful places. And then when one time you're like, can you take a photo of me? So like there's proof that I was actually around. It always doesn't look right. You're like squinting or some weird shit is in the background. Like it's never quite as beautiful as if you take it, right? And so I'm like, I want to remember this and I want to be in these photos. And I don't want to be stressing about, is someone capturing the moment? I want to be in the moment and I want someone to snap the shots for me. And so that was the first time I hired a photographer for myself. Now think about it for a moment. How self-indulgent, right? That's what culture wants me to believe. That's what the people that don't want me to celebrate myself and my beauty and my bigness and everything I had lived up until 46. Like, it's inconvenient when we begin to awaken to our power, to our beauty, to the fact that we should be celebrated. And gosh darn it, why hadn't I been celebrating myself in the most magical ways for the 45 years before? Like, and knowing exactly what I wanted, asking for it and giving it to myself. And then my husband, every day that I was at that hotel, which was a month, sent me a dozen roses from the same florist just a few blocks down. They would deliver the flowers every day with a love note written on the Georges Cinq notepad, because they would write it, whoever took the deliveries, in whoever's handwriting. Like, he would email it to them every day what the note should say. I still have all those notes. But roses don't die after a day. So there would be moments of 3 or 4 bouquets of roses in my suite at the hotel. I mean, I felt like a queen. And of course, on my birthday, the hotel filled the space up with flowers and cakes and macaroons and balloons and presents. And I was so extremely celebrated that when I first walked in and saw how much was there for me, you know what the first thing I thought was? They must think I'm someone else. They must have me confused. And I spend the first few days trying to figure out who they mixed me up with. Because that couldn't all be for me, could it? But it was. I was such a sign to them of real normal life coming back, like hope, COVID life and lockdown and not working. And then here's one guest and a chance for people to begin to re-enter some sort of normalcy, going back to work. And their welcome was so over the top in the best possible way. There was so much love. They would do little things, like they would see that I was at the time practicing yoga. I had my yoga mat rolled out in the room. They would bring me a candle to light during my practice. Little gifts, like, they see that like your sunglasses are on the side, the little sunglass cleaning pad with the Georges Cinq logo on it. Like, just the way they rolled up my iPhone cable and the way they organized my clothes after they asked me if they were allowed to touch my things, because this was COVID and people were scared. It was such an outpouring of love from complete strangers. And the first thing I noticed was my inability to receive it. And so literally crying at the beauty that was before me, crying at the amount of abundance and luxury that I was just surrounded, immersed in, and allowing myself to melt, soften, and open into it, to receive it, because it was for me, not for anyone else, not by mistake, planned, designed, curated just for me, by them, and then just like I had done it for myself. So just in that first week there was so much for me to receive, and so many ways that I saw that really my ability, my window, my opening for receiving was so small, because I had been so used to giving to others. And so back to the topic of celebration, why do we feel like we're not celebrated quite right? One, it is our inability to receive. And we think by controlling it, just if it looked just right, if they only did that, if the cake was vanilla, not strawberry, if that dress was red, not black, if that ring was square, not round, then it would be okay. But no, it's our inability to receive. And so we hang on to the tiny little things to pick on that are imperfect, not to notice that it's actually our capacity to receive beauty, love. And spoiler alert, it's tied to your capacity to receive money. And it stems from nervous system regulation and how safe it was for you when you were little to surrender, to receive, to trust life, to find beauty in life in accepting it in the way just it is, because it's all for you. You don't have to control it. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to fix it. And so this tiny little experiment, okay, it was big. of flying myself. I was so scared on that flight to Paris. This is so silly. This is so irresponsible, going to France for my birthday in the middle of a world pandemic. What if I die? I mean, like, those are the kind of risks I thought I was taking, right? Like, this is what I'm doing here. And yet, yes, there was something there I needed to experiment with and explore. And so being in this hotel, the first 2 weeks I was alone. The end of the second week, they started to bring in some more staff. They started to place flowers in the lobby. If you know the Four Seasons George Sank, you know they're famous for their flowers by Jeff Leatham. They started to bring that stuff in the lobby. There started to be commotion and people around, and I got to watch the hotel come back to life. But the 2 weeks that I was there, like a queen entering her private palace or castle, where all of my needs are tended to so beautifully and so luxuriously, was such a lesson for me. Receiving from others, receiving from myself, daring to go after what it was, what I wanted, how I wanted to celebrate my birthday. And you know, when we do that, when we can actually get in touch with, like, how do I like to be celebrated? What feels good? Regardless of how we think the world will judge it, we actually give an example to the ones who love us of how we like to be celebrated. Because if we walk around saying, oh, no, I'm good. I need nothing. As long as the kids are happy, I'm happy. I just love doing beautiful things for my husband. I'm good. Like, I'm so low maintenance. I'm so low key. Like, I'm not even here. I need so little. I'm just such a simple girl. Now, when I was saying that, for me, it wasn't true. I wanted the big, the beautiful, the sparkly, the shiny, the fancy. But I thought I was not allowed because that was the narrative I was fed for so long. Coming from being born to and growing up in a place where excess and luxury like that was not allowed. It just wasn't present. It wasn't a thing. Where did I even get those crazy ideas, right? And so daring to explore that, aligning myself with how I loved certain things. I love to travel. I love beautiful hotels. I love live flowers. I love to sip a beautiful latte with the most amazing latte art, not from paper, but from a ceramic cup. Like, sometimes the most simplest things are the most beautiful to me, but they're still mine. And the minute I show that to others, they know how to celebrate me. They know how to love me. Because instead of saying, I have no needs, I'm good, don't worry about me, which just teaches them that we need nothing and we're fine, and then we're resentful and disappointed when we don't get anything, we're giving those we love examples of how they can love us and celebrate us. And that was not a lesson I learned until I turned 46. Because for so long I wanted to be no fuss and simple and inexpensive and not inconvenient and not too big and not to ask for too many things. But I was repressing the truth of who I was. And that 46th birthday, I will never forget it. Not for any other reason except that it opened the floodgates to allowing myself, giving myself permission to give into my desires. And it freed me in a way I cannot describe to you. And that feeling of being excited about who you are and your day and your life and how good this present moment is. Like, for so long, I felt like I needed to hide it or cap it or small it because it would make everyone around me maybe not to feel so good about themselves. But what good is a lamp if you put a shade on top of it? What good is my light if it doesn't reach anywhere but my own proximity? Why am I here if I'm going to want and desire things and have a passion for things and then hide them? And I think I just got to a point where it was like, no more. And not because what had come before that was bad. It was just a new season for me. My children were grown. They were more independent. You know, the The days of throwing their birthday parties were over. Now they celebrate themselves. I'm still celebrating my husband, that just like I've changed how I like to be celebrated now, so has he. And I honor his need, his desire, and who he is in this season and how he self-expresses himself as a person now. And then I ask for that same space for myself, like, know me now. Not the girl I was when we met and I was 21. Not the young mother, not the busy entrepreneur or COO running and chasing. Not the girl I was in my 30s. Not the girl I was in my 40s, the woman I am today at 51. And self-celebration was such a portal for me to tapping back into my joy. Just the sheer energy of joy racing and rushing and running through my body. It is so sacred, ladies. It is so sacred. And if you can live your life full of yourself, full of that life force, you will be unstoppable. And then you radiate your beauty, your light, your magnetism. It's all there and everything shifts. And for me, there's such a clear before and after. And everything that came after that birthday fell in my lap. I began to trust. I began to desire to make my life beautiful in the smallest of ways. One simple rose. Not settling. And none of it was about the money. I didn't have any more money in my bank account before I turned 46 than after. But I just started to live my life differently. Like I was someone who deserved everything that was laid out for me in that Four Seasons suite. Like I was someone who was worthy of the birthday party of a queen and staying in her own palace in the middle of Paris in one of the most prestigious hotels in the world. Of course it was all for me. Of course it can all be for you. But you need to weed through the narratives that tell you you need to stay small, insignificant, and not be too inconvenient. And so self-celebration is so magical. And it's something I come back to again and again and again because it keeps that current in me flowing. And when I then turn to express that energy into creating something, it's magical. I published my book shortly after that. And that is not a coincidence. It was literally like tapping into a new channel, tuning into a new frequency, unblocking something that had been stuck, like taking top of a whole part of who I was that was like neatly hidden and put away for no one to see it. It was such a release, and with it came a new way of living. And it was a key moment in my life. And I just really wanted to share that with you because I think so many of us live our lives through the celebrations of others. And that's beautiful, but not unless it includes you in it as the main character of your own movie called your life, the heroine of your own story, the queen in your own castle. Like what is waiting to be moved through you that you're blocking because you're not allowed? It's too much. Whatever the story is, it'll be judged. People won't like me. What is the invitation here for you? Something that's so deeply on your heart that you're just keeping right under the surface because you couldn't possibly explore that. Celebrate the shit out of who you are. Throw yourself big parties. Because if you're not going to be full of yourself, then what are you going to be full of? Or whom? That's the whole point. And so I'm just going to leave you with an invitation to celebrate yourself a little bit more. Maybe for you, it's not a trip to Paris to the Four Seasons, but if it is, And that's what I offer. I mean, my retreats were born out of this whole awakening that I had, this new way of living and being and this realization. But I'll talk to you about that another time. What is a way in which you can celebrate yourself? Small ways or big ways. I want to invite you to explore that because it changed my life. That's it for me. I am looking forward to speaking to you next time. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you resonate with this message, or if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss in a future episode, I would love to hear about it. Send me a message on Instagram at Marta Hobbs. If you'd like to move more deeply in a community of like-minded, soul-led women, please join me in mine. It's called Come Closer. And if someone in your life would benefit from today's episode, I would love it if you send it along to them. Just click share in your podcast app and text it to a friend. Finally, I would be so grateful if you'd rate and review the Marta Hobbs podcast in your favorite podcast app. Your support will help this show find the women who need it. Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Until next time, I'm sending you all my love. Take care.